Welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast. Today we've got an incredible guest who's going to share a story that will leave you inspired and motivated. I bumped into this guy, Greene, during my time in Budapest, and let me tell you, he's the real deal. This journey is all about turning his business around for almost nothing to a whopping 20K in just a single month. Dee is not just a business wizard, he's a genuinely open and positive person. He's all about helping high-ticket coaches bring in the cash through YouTube. What's more, he's nomadic with his family, which makes him even more admirable. We will hit many topics during this conversation, along with many tools that you will be able to use if you're interested in building your own business. I myself became really motivated after this chat. Let's hope you will feel the same way. Welcome to the show about new ideas on how we live, work, and connect. This is Borivik, your host, and in the following episode, together with my guests and listeners, we are again in search of something different. Dee, welcome on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having
me. Okay, so I thought that we can start a little bit on the note of how you became a nomad and how you travel as a nomad. So you're traveling a little bit different because you're traveling with a family.
Yes.
And can you tell a little bit about like the beginning on how you decided to become a nomad and how did it went down?
I mean, like the beginning was 2020. I started an online business, and my goal at that time was, this was like a little bit, I think when I started it, it was before the pandemic. It was like a couple
before
weeks.
It was cool.
My goal is to travel like once every 3 months. So prior to that point, me and my wife had already been to like Paris. We went to Italy, and we had been to London and Spain. So like we were already kind of traveling a little bit. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I think it was a year or so before that, I was also doing like travel vlogging, like on YouTube. So at first I thought like, oh, this is what I want to do. Then I was like, no, this is like too much, like vlogging like every day and editing. And then it's like the better you get, the more work you're going to have because you have brain. I was like, I don't want to do like that. So I started an online business. I was like, if I could travel once every 3 months, that'd be awesome. So as we started making more money and looking into that, there started to have like these places during the pandemic that had like these digital nomad visas, like in the beginning. Like I think it was like Barbados. They had a couple of countries that were like just the first ones. So they're like, oh, that'd be cool because like you can't really travel, but you could go to these countries. You could live there for like a year and you could stay. So we were going to go to Barbados at first for like a year. So then we started watching videos on it and we're like, oh man, like there's people that are living like a digital nomad life, which is not really trying to live in one place. And you like basically just move and you buy an apartment, you stay there and you try to become a citizen. They're still a citizen of where they live, but they're just like on permanent vacation, just going to all these different locations. So we're like, let's actually try that. So a lot of people suggested in the beginning, like going to Mexico. So for our anniversary in November, we went to Mexico for like a week. Then we really liked it. So then we're like, all right, let's like when our lease is up, which was going to be in February. So we had November to February. We were like, let's just test it. So we ended up selling a lot of our stuff. Some of this stuff we put in storage because like if we don't really like this, we could at least come back and we don't have to buy a whole new like bed and all this type of stuff. But we ended up going to Mexico and really liked it. And so that was in 2020, February 2021. And we've been traveling like ever since. It was just crazy. Like I was telling someone, I was like, man, my goal in 2020 was to travel like once every 3 months. And then since then, I've only been in the United States like for probably 3 months, like totally.
Wow.
So like complete like opposite.
Amazing. And so there's one thing that I really like about your story next to this, like how you just decided to travel with a family that I think, I know a lot of people traveling, but not that many people travel as a family, as a nomad. But we can get back to this, but there's another thing that I really like, and that's how you realized how to run your business. So when you started in Mexico, your financials weren't as good as it is right now, or you weren't in a good place, if I remember correctly your story. But how was that? What happened there?
Yeah, so what happened was like in 2020, I launched my online business and I had invested in like a coach. So Dan Henry, if anyone like that's listening to this is like, I want to try to follow the same journey. So it was like Dan Henry. And his whole thing in the beginning was like, here's how to create like an online course. So you can have like passive, like make money, like passively basically. So it's like, that's cool. Like that kind of like falls in line with like the 4-hour work week where like you have an online course, you're making money, and then you're basically on the beach and you're making money. That was kind of like my vision. A couple weeks or a couple months, I forget the time, but like into this program, then he's like, actually a better way to do it is not like having like a course that you sell for like $400 or $1,000 and you're trying to sell it passively. It's like selling a high ticket program. So when you have a high ticket program, you're selling it for $3,000 or more, and it's easier to sell because you can just get people on the call. So we were kind of like, dang, do we do this or not? Like we already were building it in this way. We weren't thinking of getting on calls. We didn't want to have to do any of this type of stuff, but we were like, let's just go for it. So I remember like having a dinner with my aunt and uncle, like asking them like, yo, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to get on sales calls. I don't know if I want to do high ticket. Like this is different. And they're just like, kind of just go for it, see what happens. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to try it. So our goal was to take them out to eat, like the next time we saw them. And by the next time that we saw them, because it was like COVID, you weren't seeing people like all the time. I think the next time we saw them in like a month or two, maybe 2 months, it was like we were already doing like 20K like a month, like USD. So it was like it started working like really well. We were selling like I was helping pastors use social media to attract like church members. So we were selling it for like 3,000. They were joining. So at that time we were signing up like 6-7 people a month. That was going really well. So that's why I was like, all right, moving to Mexico like definitely makes sense. So what happened was we moved to Mexico. At this time we're doing like 20, 30, in between 15 and maybe 30 like a month. And what happened was I had this idea in my head that I feel like most people have. Maybe this will be important for people listening. It's like, all right, you're making this money, now just move to Mexico or Thailand or wherever, Bali, wherever it is, and then like you just outsource everything and just go to the beach. And I did that, and everything was just like just fell apart because it's like it does take work. It takes a lot of attention. We try to hire a ton of people. We try to it was just like not really focusing so much on the business and really just trying to live like this digital like nomad life. I feel like in the beginning that was like I really stopped putting in the work. It was just like, okay, we'll just try to automate everything, which I feel like a lot of people make it seem like that's what it's like. And I realized that's usually
and that's bullshit. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And that's not how it works. And anybody who tells you that you can have passive income in just like half a year, like 6 months or something, they probably are lying to you. So I don't think that's that easy. And I'm so happy that you bring this up because I think that's one of like the bad parts about being a digital nomad, that they're like putting us together with drop shipping and passive income, and then guys get rich, get fast. But I think that's and without any jobs, right? Without any actual work that you actually have to put it. But I think that's really good that you highlight this.
I think I will say, I'm not going to say like it doesn't work, like doing this whole passive thing, but I will say this, the people that I think it works for are the people that are teaching other people how to do it passively. Does that make sense? It's like, that's their business. Their business is like, I'm going to teach you how to move to Bali and make money passively. So they're getting you to believe that, you pay them, and then they're the one that makes the money passively.
But they still need to work on that business.
You're the one that joins and you realize like, oh wait, like this isn't real.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So can you get a little bit more in detail on what happened on like how did you manage to just go from kind of, I don't know if it was zero, but to like the first 20K? How did that happen?
I think like I'll go into specifics, but I feel like the general theme is like, this is like the case for almost everybody, right? It's like you invest in yourself or you come up with this idea, and I feel like God or whatever is testing you, and you're like going up this like little hill or whatever, and most people just quit right here. It's like you're almost there. Like if you would have just kept going just a little bit more, like you would have had the success. And I think that's how it was for us. Like we built this thing, we invested in the coach. We were almost there. I was doing some calls. No one was buying. It just felt like it wasn't working. And then my wife was like, it doesn't matter. Like if we can't pay a bill, like we're going to figure that, like you're going to just quit everything you're doing just because like we might not be able to pay something that's just stupid. Like we'll figure it out if it gets to that point. And then the next week was or a couple of days later is when people started buying. So I think just in general, a lot of people, they just give up like way too early. It's like you're about to, I was at this event, and this guy that I know, Neil Davis, his like motto is like, either it's going to work or it's going to work. It's like, you got to figure out how to make it work. Like, it's going to work. Like, it's the only way it doesn't work is if you just give up. So I feel like for most people, it's like, you have what it takes. You have the information, you have the knowledge. It's just like, you're giving up too early, or you're just not continuing to learn. So basically what I was doing was, I had, I guess, like 3 things that really helped. So I knew at the time, like, I'm doing high ticket. This is going to be $3,000. I've never helped this niche, like, ever. I've never done anything with churches or anything like that. So I knew, like, my strength could be just getting them to like me. If they liked me enough, they'd be willing to pay me. That was my thought. I was like, I don't know all the fancy stuff. I don't know all this other type of stuff, but I know, like, if I was in person, I could get them to like me enough to go, all right, like, that seems cool. Like, I'll pay him. So I was like, everyone else is pretty much just DMing everyone. And, like, that's all they do. And that's cool, but I don't want to do that forever. I want to have, like, a brand where people are coming to me. So I was like, YouTube is, like, the best way for me to do that. So I just started creating videos on there to, like, help them get used to, like, my personality. I wasn't doing anything fancy. I was doing them all off, like, my phone. And I was just trying to be authentic and add a lot of value. So I was doing that. Then I had, like, a free training that I did. That was, like, basically, essentially what it was, I forget how long it was, but it was telling them, like, most of you guys right now are hiring, like, or not even hiring. You have, like, a volunteer that's, like, someone's mom or their grandma or someone that's, like, trying to do your social media, but they have no training. I'm like, would you just have a random volunteer build your church? Like, it just doesn't make sense. They need to have some type of training or background or knowledge. So instead of you feeling like you need to have this big team, give me one of your volunteers. I will train them on what to do. And they will be able to efficiently run your social media. And if that person ever leaves, you'll still have the training. So I had this, like, webinar, like, BSL. So what I would do is I would run, like, Facebook ads to this training. Either people would book a call from there, or I would send them to my YouTube and it would, like, nurture them. And then some people would see me from there. So driving traffic to this training, and then following up with the YouTube, people would get on a call, and then we would close them. And it just so happened, I think it was just, like, perfect timing to where it was during the pandemic. So, like, all the churches closed. So they were like, either I have to invest in something or I'm not going to be able to reach anyone. And we were kind of like the only offer that was out there that any of them would see. And I think just how human psychology works, a lot of them were like, we don't really see any offers like this. And, like, there's no Black people that are running this. Like, oh, we want to support, like, our own people type of thing. So it was like, I was like the only person ever showing up offering what we had. So I think at that moment in time, it was just, like, a perfect combination of, like, everything.
I don't even know what to say. I think it's amazing how it just, like, happens from one day to another. But if you listen to what happened to you, you put a lot of effort and a lot of technology, a lot of strategy into this, in a way that many things came together at the same time. So now it actually makes sense what you say, that you have the knowledge, you have what it takes, but you need to be consistent and you need to wait until it actually happens. And I think now that you explained what you actually had, it doesn't mean that you just need to do a little bit. You need to do a lot and then wait until it's actually going to happen. And I think that's amazing, because your offer was right. Your market was super right. The timing became right. And then it just all got together, which is amazing. So what do you do now? Are you still in the same business?
No. So I think, like, what I realized over time was, like, I didn't really like that. I just like being super honest about this. So, like, I just really got tired of working with pastors, and now I know why. But at the time, I know why more now, which I'll get to in a minute. But basically, I was not just like, I'm doing this for the money. The reason why I ended up working with pastors to begin with is that wasn't even my plan. My plan was, I had a social media agency. I was helping local businesses with their social media. And the issue that I felt like I was running into is, like, they didn't want to take my advice. They looked at me as like an employee. And so they would not take my advice. And then, like, a couple months later, they would go, oh, we're not seeing results. And I'm like,
it's not working. Yeah.
I told you. But then they'd go, oh, well, yeah, we just can't afford this anymore. So I'm like, if I have an online program, they can pay, but the implementation is up to them. So if they don't do it, I still got paid, and then they can just do whatever you want. So I started sharing these tips online, and I was joining a bunch of Facebook groups to try to get, like, my ideal clients. And there was a group called, like, Church Social Media Managers. And the advice in there was absolutely awful. I'm like, oh, you guys just do stupid stuff. Like, everything is literally, every post is like, don't forget, church starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. See you there. I'm like, you guys are just doing bulletin board posts. You never share any value. You never help people out. Everything is just like, come to church. You're never actually helping people with your social media ever. So I just did a live video of like, man, if I was running a church, like this is like what I would do. And it got like, I don't know, like 3,000 or 4,000 views, like in this like Facebook group. And then like everyone started messaging me, like, how do we work with you? So my thought process was like, man, if you look at Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Gary Vee, Ty Lopez, like all of these big business influencers, they are so obsessed, not just with like making money, but like my knowledge has to impact people. I have to share it in a way that people can easily understand it, retain it, and then implement on it. And they're obsessed with the results. I feel like church is like, we just want you to come. Like you go to church every single Sunday for 20, 30 years, and you know as much information after 30 years as you did when you first went there when you're like 10. So I was like, social media could be a really great way for them to spread their message, help a lot of people, and just like impact more lives. But what I realized was a lot of the pastors don't really care about that. They're always like, well, what's the ROI? Like how much, if Bordy comes to our church, like how much is she going to tithe? How do I know that she's going to come and pay? How do I know this? How do I know that? And I'm like, dang, like these people aren't really that passionate about like information. Like I feel like entrepreneurs.
Crazy. I would never think this because I'm not religious, so I wouldn't know that what's going on within. And when you say that this might be something that they would be interested, it's the interesting part that you can say this for many other aspects of whoever I meet during their work. They just want to sell, and then they don't think about giving value. So for example, in this particular podcast at this point, I just wanted to create value, and I don't even monetize too much of this podcast at this point. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to at one point, but I just really wanted to give some kind of value and introduce amazing people like you for other people, because I think that eventually is going to lead you to the point of you will be able to monetize. And if you don't mind, I'm going to tell one story about this that also happened to me. I remember I gave my first talk about my travels. It was about 10 years ago in Hungary. And I had like 60 people showing up, which was like full house. And I was going there and I was just extremely happy. And I was thinking, this is like, I'm going there, I'm doing this for free. I put a lot of effort in it. I'm just walking to this location and I'm so excited and I'm so happy I get to spend my time like this. And I'm so happy that I'm going to be there talking about my trip to India, by the way. And my mom was asking me, I think that afternoon, she's like, okay, so you put a lot of effort in it. You don't get any money out of this. Why are you doing this? And I said, well, listen, I don't actually know, but they say that if you enjoy something, then you're going to get good at it. And if you're going to get good at it, then you're going to be able to get money for it. And then 1 or 2 years later, I had these speeches. I had like 360 people coming. I actually charged them for entry. And then a publisher came to this event, and then they asked me to write a book for them, and that just opened so many other doors. So I think if you actually honestly change your perception and say like, I'm going to give value because I want to give value and full stop, not because it's going to be good for the algorithm or I'm going to be famous, blah, blah, blah. It's just because you want to be there at that moment. Then I think it's going to create so many amazing and honest and genuine opportunities for you.
Yeah, so I think like for me, like what I realized was like I have to make an impact with like what I'm doing. So if I'm just like working with a bunch of people that most of them, I don't care what anyone says. It's like from my personal experience, most of the pastors I talk to, like they don't have, like they never talked on that level of like what you're saying. Like, man, I really just want to help these people. It's all about like a ROI or like who's gonna come, I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, who has this passion? Like who really desperately wants to impact people with their message? Yes, they want to make money, but they have like a deep cause. And I was like, I think online coaches have this because like that's what they're selling is knowledge. And if you don't provide value, you can't sell what you're doing because it's not a service or like a product. So I'm like, there's a lot of people that are like, man, I remember when I was 60 pounds obese and I want to help people overcome that problem like I did. I remember when I went through a divorce and I want to help people overcome this, like those types of people. So I shifted from helping pastors to now helping online coaches. And we just got super narrow with our focus. So instead of just like social media, it's like YouTube. So using what helped me be able to now generate almost like $400,000. I'm like, let us get you on YouTube so you can impact more people. But not only get on YouTube, I think a lot of people aren't on YouTube because they feel like they have to have a fancy camera, editing, lighting, microphone, all this type of stuff. I'm like, over the past 3 years, I literally, like I was saying before, recorded off of my phone. I just focused on like, just get these people to like me and add a ton of value and just do that consistently. And that's what worked. And so now that's what we're doing, is like helping coaches use YouTube to attract clients without needing fancy editing, microphone, all that type of stuff, just by creating these like simple, authentic, valuable videos. And my thing is like, we should all, like what you're doing is like, almost everyone, or pretty much everyone that should be creating content in some way, shape, or form, because there's somebody out there that needs it. Maybe not 1 million people need the information you have. Maybe not 100,000 people. Maybe not 1,000. Maybe not even 100. But maybe there's 60 people or 20 people or whatever. But almost everyone has a certain amount of knowledge of one topic that, if they were to share that, maybe not always have a podcast, but maybe even in an Instagram post or whatever it is, like they would be able to change other people's lives. And like you said, if you want to, if you keep doing that on a consistent basis, opportunities always open up, whether that's being asked to be on someone's show like this, a publisher comes, you get to write a book, like whatever it is. But I really feel like content in the form of like sharing your knowledge is like always a good thing to do. It makes the world a better place. And if you have a product or service that you're selling, like, and you get more people to like you and trust you, then you're going to be taken care of as well.
100%. And I think that's why the internet is amazing, because yeah, of course, at one point you're going to monetize whatever you have to offer, but we have so many different views on the world that we can share. And then this makes people feel a little bit less lonely. As you said, you wanted to change something, and then you manage because of the internet. I'm in the same journey as you, and I learned so much on the internet. And I think some people are getting a little bit upset with technology, and then wherever we're going to go now with the technology. But I think what happens is that you can choose to feel more connected, or you can choose to feel more alone with this technology that we have ahead. And I think it's amazing that there are all these online coaches that you are helping, and other people who are helping businesses to thrive, and everything that happens, that it's available for you. You just need to go. And then also that you can create and you can be part of the conversation. I think that's also super amazing.
Yeah.
One question though, like, I know that you're creating consistently video, and I'm not saying that I'm suffering, but I use it as a challenge. My perspective with this podcast particularly, I'm having one episode out every week. The same goes for you, I think, on your channel. Yeah. And I learned a lot from you on how to do that. And I would love if you would share it with the world, like how to create more consistently on the internet, any kind of content that you're creating.
I think the first step, which is very simple, is make it about them, not you. Going back to like, if you believe that the knowledge that you have can help other people, it's really the most selfish thing you can do is not to put it out, because you're like, oh, well, I don't want to start a podcast because I have to use my headphones, and they're not even AirPods, they're the wired ones, and that's not going to look good. And people aren't going to, it's like, bruh, you know what I mean? Or it's like, oh, my wall is white, and it's like, I don't have a neon sign in the background, and all this stuff that people really worry about. And I'm like, if you're teaching people video editing or something like that, or you're trying to create like a show based purely on entertainment, I get that. But when you're sharing like knowledge, like right now, if we're talking about like how to get through a divorce or how to avoid a divorce, a woman that's like depressed and really questioning her life does not care what color the wall is, does not care what the headphones look like. She's just like, give me this information, that way I can go use it to impact my life. So I think the first thing is like, you have to get over yourself of like wanting to be perfect, wanting everything to look right, and you just have to get started. So if that's a podcast, literally just start the podcast, and also realize that the first one is not going to be like, this episode we're doing right now better not be the best episode you ever do. Like, it's just right. Cause it's like, it's one of the first ones. It's like, I hope that the next one gets better, then the next one gets better. And the next, like, and if you plan on doing this for a long time, this is going to be one of like hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people think like we're treating this episode right here that like it's the only one that's ever going to exist. So it's like, just get started, put stuff out there. It's not going to be perfect, but most people don't struggle with the quality. They don't struggle with what it looks like. They struggle with the consistency. So I'm like, tackle that part first. Like, put out an episode of your podcast every week for 2 months. And if you can do that, then get better headphones, then do all this other type of stuff that you want to do, right? Then figure out, hey, instead of Zoom, use Riverside or whatever it is, but just get started with like what you have. Same with YouTube. Pull out your phone, record. Yes, your thumbnails are going to suck. Your titles are going to suck. You're going to suck at what you're saying, but the videos are out there for people to see. And you never know like what those opportunities come about. Like I've put out videos and episodes or whatever that I thought was bad, but you know, someone might see it that's like, oh wow, I did a video like off my phone, like on my story, and some dude was like, oh bro, you're walking like by my house. Like he's from France and he moved to Budapest, ended up seeing that, and then from there, like he ended up becoming like one of our clients. It's like you never really know like who's watching or who needs your information. It's not always about the perfect it is. So I think whether it's Instagram, TikTok, podcast, whatever it is, like use what you already have, like just get started. And your main goal should be to just spread value and then just be yourself. Because like there's not a lot of authenticity now. It's just a lot of like make it look as pretty as possible. Like I have a professional podcast mic, I have a great studio, but then it's like everyone feels like now that they have to be perfect and put on a show in order to be someone online versus just being authentic. What we're doing now, people will be like, wow, this was like a lot of value. Thanks for sharing this. That's really what they care about. So I think just getting started, making it more about them, like, man, they need this knowledge, and it'd be selfish for me not to put out a podcast episode this week, even if it's grainy or it doesn't sound right, or even if the cat walks in, like whatever it is, doesn't matter. Like just put it out, and then you're gonna get better over time. That's what I think.
Yeah. Wow. So do you think everybody has something to say for the world?
I truly think so. Even if it's like I said, maybe it's not for millions of people. I don't think everyone is supposed to be like a celebrity. Everyone's not even going to be like a micro influencer, but maybe it's for you really never know. Like I feel like a lot of us, we feel like sometimes it's this like, well, Bodhi learned how to become an author and speaker and travel the world. Like I don't have this skill. It's like, okay, that's true. But yesterday you were super depressed and you learned, and then you did something that made you feel happier. Could be, hey, you went into the kitchen and you realized, man, if I get a smoothie, that makes me feel better. Like that could that right there could help someone. Like, man, whenever I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling stuck, I just go outside, go on a walk, and I go get a bubble tea or a coffee, and it makes me feel a little bit better, right? Saying something like that could help one person of like, oh, let me try to go on a walk today. So I think it's not always like you're trying to sell someone a coaching program or whatever, but it's just like sharing our stories and our testimonials, like our testimony, like along the way, that a lot of the times it's stuff that I think is like, oh, no one's going to care about that. People are like, yo, thanks for sharing that. Like, I really need that. And almost everyone that I talk to, even, I think that's why I like traveling, because there's people in Hungary, there's people in Colombia, there's people in Mexico that feel like, oh, I can't, like, they look at, I guess, like Americans as like, they see us like all the everywhere, right? Like we're like on the news, see the Kardashians or Michael Jordan, LeBron James, like Kanye West, like all these popular names are typically from America or like Canada or maybe London. And they feel like, oh, I'm Hungarian. Like I would never be able to like be this type of person, or I'm Mexican or whatever. But when you talk to them, like you've been through like so many things that you have a lot of valuable information. You've gone through a lot of stuff. So almost everyone I meet has some type of story that they could share. It's either they a lot of the time just aren't vulnerable enough to share it. But it would be, I'm like, you have a lot more information. But it's like we unfortunately are surrounded by people that don't tell us those things. It's like, oh, well, why are you doing that speech for free? Like, that doesn't make sense. Why are you going to India? That doesn't make sense. Why are you doing so? Like, we always have this like doubt. But if you can just like truly believe in yourself and you're just like, hey, I'm going to share it. If it helps someone, help someone. If it doesn't, I put it out there. I think people will start to realize like, yeah, you do have a lot of stuff that could, again, might not be a million people, but it's going to be somebody.
I'm at this point. I'm just like, as soon as we finish with this one, I'm going to record like 5 more new ones. You're inspiring me so much in this one. You're doing, yeah, you definitely worth your money. Yeah, I'm already like, oh my God. I hope that when you're listening to this, dear listener, you feel the same way. We are really looking forward to whatever you're putting out there, and then just like tag us if this inspired you to create your first video, because we definitely want to see that. There's another follow-up question. So that's really good that you said that on the first one, it might be a little bit more difficult to create. And I'm learning so much in this progress. So this is going to be the 19th episode that comes out. And even during 20 episodes, more or less 20 episodes, I learned so much on how to create this and how to put things together. So I'm just looking forward to see what else is possible. But one of the biggest thing that I've learned is that when I'm doing a solo episode, and I think many people, you as well do a lot of solo episodes. You do mainly solo, actually.
Yeah, all my YouTube stuff is just me.
You just like, so I found that that's way more difficult for me to put together unless, for example, for me, if there is a story that's helpful. What other tricks do you use to be able to speak so consistently, so well put, so articulate as you are right now? Do you have any tools for that?
I do. I think really I just don't care, man. Like I think like I've done it for I like, and it's not like I don't care what people think. I think for me it's really like I've seen it. Like I've seen it so many times to where like I'll post something and I think it's like I have an idea in my head and I'm like, this is not going to get a lot of likes or a lot of views, and I post it and it doesn't get a lot of likes or a lot of views, but I get one message that's like, yo, I really needed that. So I'm like, you never really know, like what you feel like is not articulated properly or doesn't come across as good. Like someone else doesn't really care about that. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, hey, here's how to go to India. Like I went to India and then here's a couple of tips. Like when you get there to help you like have a good trip and maybe you're stuttering, like I don't care. Like, bro, I'm about to go to India. I need those tips. You know what I mean? So like, thank you for sharing that so much. It's the same as like if you're going out to coffee with someone, like you're not going to always say it like perfectly, just speak. But I think for most people, what I have them do is I think it's like a 4 or 5 step process, which is like, first thing that you want to do is think of like, what are you afraid of? Like, what is the thing you're scared of? So a lot of people will say, well, I'm afraid that like, I don't have the best setup for my podcast. Let's say that, right? Or, hey, I'm afraid that if I do a solo podcast that I'm not going to be able to come up with ideas or something like that. So then the next thing I tell them to do is like, what's the worst case scenario, right? So, oh, I want to have a solo podcast, but I'm not going to be able to come up with ideas. I'm not going to be able to talk that long. Okay, so what's the worst case scenario? Like, well, in some of the episodes when I'm speaking, I'm going to like pause or I'm going to mess up or it's going to be awkward. I'm like, okay, cool. So that's like the worst case scenario in your mind. Or maybe, people will make fun of me or they're going to say, oh, you're Hungarian. Why are you trying to do like an English podcast? And they're making fun of you in the comments. So then I'm like, so then how would you handle that? Like, what would you do? Like, let's say that came true. It's like, well, okay, if I was stuttering, I would just, I don't know, edit out the mistakes. Or if they were making fun of me, I would either delete it or I wouldn't care. I'm like, okay, so then what is your why? What is the reason why you're doing this, right? Like, what's the best case scenario? It's like, well, maybe I could grow a podcast that reaches hundreds of thousands of people. I could change their lives. I could help them become digital nomads, better entrepreneurs, blah, blah, blah. So then I'm like, is it worth it then? Like, is, possibly getting made fun of once every 3 months of your accent worth you maybe reaching hundreds of thousands of people, right? So people start to see in their mind, like, okay, I know what the worst case scenario is. It's not that bad. If it did happen, I know how I would handle it. And I know like what my why is. So then now it just comes down to like, okay, now just get started. Like, and accept the fact that it's probably not going to be that good, like when you first do. And then you just have to learn along the way. So let's say for you, it's like you're putting out a solo podcast, like you just get started. It's not going to be that good. Then you're going to realize like, what are the mistakes? Well, man, it doesn't feel good when I can't come up with topics. Okay, so then just go learn how to come up with topics. You know what I mean? So it's like, go learn that thing. Or, hey, I'm not really good at speaking. Okay, there's a lot of stuff for that. Go to Toastmasters, like watch YouTube videos on speaking. So you're just like putting yourself out there, not having the fears. And then as you're doing stuff, just like learning along the way. But I think a lot of people, it's not really the knowledge, it's just like the getting started. That's why my whole thing is like, just go do it. Like once you put yourself out there, it's not going to be as hard as they're like, oh, wow, you're right. It's not as hard as I thought.
Do you do any preparations before you hit the record button? So, I mean, do you have like a mind map or something that helps you?
That's a good question because I think a lot of people are like, man, you just pull out your phone and record. And I'm like, yeah, it does look like that sometimes, but that's not it. So like there's people I used to think were like that, but that's not the case. So sometimes I do that, but I've done it long enough to where I can like kind of formulate it in my mind. So if we're talking like, I don't really know about a podcast. Podcast is kind of the same, but you have more room to like mess up and just talk. And if you have like a 30-second short, there's like less time. And if you have like a 10-minute YouTube video, a little bit more, but still. So essentially on YouTube and shorts, what I would do is like, you have like some type of a hook, which is like a question that you're asking someone. Then maybe you're giving context to the video. That's what I like to do. So for example, let's say if I was like recording a YouTube video on like making a podcast, right? how do you get started on your first podcast? Then I'll give context of the video. Maybe I'm outside, like, hey, I'm just like outside in Budapest right now, like just walking around. But like, this is a question, like one of my friends just asked me on her podcast. So I wanted to like maybe answer it for you guys as well. Then I just go into the content. So what I would suggest doing is blah, blah, blah. And then if you want them to do something at the end, you have like a call to action. So I would say, hey, this is what you do. By the way, if you actually want me to help you like get started with your podcast or be more popular on camera, like I have a program where we can help you with that. Like just send me a DM and I'll help you. So that's kind of like my framework. It's like the hook, maybe some context of where you're recording, because a lot of times I'm just like out and about, the content, and then like a call to action like I did.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of that's a lot of things. I like when people go like, yeah, no, it's just gonna be super easy, quickly. But I like that you have already like such a structure. I think what's great in your content, so I encourage everybody to go and check them out, is that you speak really freely, but that as well you're having like such a neat structure on like point 1, point 2, point 3 is what you need. So it's super easy to remember them as well. I'm grateful that you're sharing all these tips. There is one thing that I promised the listeners in the beginning of this podcast, and that we would change a little bit of the topic that we're talking right now. We start talking about how to travel with a family, if you're open to talk about that. So you have a daughter. How old is she?
She's 11, about to be 12.
Wow. Okay. So what do you think is the difference between traveling with a family and traveling solo?
First of all, like, why do people do that? I'm like, she's 11, about to be 12. Like, people always say that. It's like, yeah, 12 boys comes after 11, or like 8. It's like she's 7, about to be 8. It's like, yeah, like all 7-year-olds are about to be 8. You know what I mean?
I understand. Like, yeah.
Like we all do that.
Yeah.
She's 11, about to be 12. It's like,
but when you say that, I always think that she's about to become 12 in like next month. So like in 2 months.
Yeah, that's why I guess I should.
Yeah.
All right. So wait, the question was, how do we travel like with the family?
Yeah. So what's the difference between? I guess you didn't travel solo.
No, I never left. I never traveled like just solo. So I don't even know what that's like.
So how does it, for example, work with your daughter? Is she homeschooled or what?
Yeah, so to give like full transparency, so like when me and my wife got married, like she already had a daughter. So she was like 3 or something when we first met. So at first we had to even work it out like with her dad, like of what to do. So they were doing this thing of like 6 months and 6 months, which my wife, after doing that again, was like that's like way too long. So that was like one thing. The next thing I think that we got lucky about is like, because of COVID, we were forced to homeschool. Like at first it wasn't homeschooling. The school was giving you the work, like, because no one, I think maybe you guys even did that here in Hungary. Like no one was going to school, so they had to give it to you online.
Yeah.
So then we were like, okay, we're already doing this. This is so much better. She can just get everything. She usually gets everything done before like lunch. So it's like, why would you go to school till like 5 p.m.? It still makes sense. So we're like, all right, let's just keep homeschooling. And I think for the first year or two, they did homeschooling from like the US, like the school program. So it was like the same thing she'd be learning in school, but you're just doing it traveling or doing it at home. And I think now my wife found out some like other program, like you can like find an online homeschooling program that they do. So she's the one that pretty much helps like with all that.
And what about socializing for her? Because I loved going to school because of the schoolmates, like my friends that I made there. But I'm an extrovert, so I can imagine that it's not the case for everyone.
I don't know. It's different. Like for me, that's how I was too. But for her, she's like, she wants to hang out with like our friends. You know what I mean? It's just different. I think, I don't know. I think it's just from us traveling and her being around us. It's just like she has different conversations than like kids do. Like when I went to the States recently, she sent me a text message and she was like, hey, she just started like crocheting like recently. And some of like our friends, like older friends, like from the States saw it. And then she was like, hey, some people want to like buy some of my crocheting like items. What do you think I should charge them? She's like, this is how much it cost me for the yarn. This is how much the labor is. This is how much I feel like it's worth, but I still need to ship it. It's like, you know,
a little entrepreneur. Yeah.
So it's like being around kids. Sometimes I think she gets like annoyed because like they're just like the conversations are like so different. But we do want to like try to find that's been, I think, the most difficult part, I would say, is like finding other people that have kids that, you also get along with the parents and like get along with the kids.
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of this era, because this starts to be a problem. So I think there was no solution because that was not a problem. People usually stayed at home with their kids.
Yeah.
I mean, staying home meaning, staying put, or being location dependent. But now I heard that there's more and more startups that actually tackling this problem. I heard about a really cool school system, like families traveling around system. I'll figure this out, and then if I found it, then I'm going to put it in show notes and send it to you as well. But the whole idea is that they actually have a school for people who are remote, and then you would go for these different locations, and the kids can go to school, and then you can hang out with the adults and co-work with the adults, and then they give you apartments, and then they establish it in various different places of the world. So it's coming. It's going to be solved, I think, really soon. Really hope so. I think, I'm planning to have an interview with the founder there as well. So let's hope that it's coming up. But what also happens is that I think when people are traveling with their kids, how is it for you to open up to new friendships? Is it like, because for me as a solo traveler, I always need to be super out there and meeting a lot of people and then putting an extra effort. How is it for you? Do you have a community in Budapest now?
Oh, so this is what I was talking about earlier when I was like, I realized like why I didn't like working, I feel like with the pastors as much as I do with entrepreneurs. And like I did this exercise earlier this week or last week, I can't remember. But basically they're like, figure out like your goal and then why do you want to do it? But then go like 7 times deep, right? You've probably done this before. So it's like, why do you want to do this? Okay, well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? Blah, blah.
I have done it a long time ago. So it's let's just go, because if somebody haven't done it, then let's just say this again. So first you say what you want to do, and then you ask why you want to do this. And then you ask again, how does it work?
Okay. So like, basically they're like, you need to come up with the struggle with, or the issue with a lot of us is like, we don't have like a specific goal. So it's like, okay, you have a business, but like, what are you trying to do? A lot of the times every day we're just working, but like, we're like, grow a business. But like, what does that mean? Do you want to be like a millionaire? Do you want to have enough money to travel? If you want to travel, how often do you want to travel? What countries? Like, we don't really know. A lot of times we're just doing stuff. So they're like, imagine if you're playing tennis. There's a different route to going to tennis for college and going to tennis to be a professional. You're going to have to do different things. So like, it's the same thing in your life. The different, like if you want to travel every week is going to be different than like, oh, I just want to travel sometimes. So like, you need to have like goals. So once you have like a specific goal you're trying to achieve, you're going to ask yourself why 7 times. So let's say like, I want to travel the world as a digital nomad. Why do you want to travel the world as a digital nomad? I want to have freedom. Why do you want to have freedom? And so on and so on and so on. So what I realized about myself is my passion is like helping other people like see the value in themselves and like help them like reach their like full potential. And I think the reason why that is because when I was growing up, I felt like I had a lot of potential, but I didn't have a lot of people I feel like truly believed me. Either like my parents doubted me, or people would say, yeah, but then like they're not really pushing you to like really go achieve it. It's kind of like a fake, like, oh yeah, you could like start this podcast, but are you sure that's really what you want to put your time into? Because like maybe you should get another, like it's kind of like that. So now that I have started to achieve different things, I know how it feels. And so now when I go to these other countries, like that's actually like my main thing. Like I don't really care too much about like going to the tourist attractions. I'm like, I want to like connect with like people, make like relationships. And then if I can help anyone out like along the way, like that's what I love to do. So for me, I think just like my energy is like pretty easy for me to like make friends. Cause like, even if I go out to get a coffee, I'm always like, yo, how's your day going? Like, how are you doing? And they're like, it's all right. I'm like, it's all right. What do you mean? Like, it's all right. Like, what's going on? So I'm usually like,
yeah, because like, you're asking these questions for Hungarians. You're never supposed to ask questions. How are you? Us Eastern Europeans, we actually answer you.
Yeah, 2 hours later, we're like drinking a coffee together, and it's like they had to clock out of their whole shift.
And then you know all the traumas that this person went through. You never ask this question unless you have 2 hours for the answer. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think like that's just my nature. Like I love doing that. So I have a lot of people I've met at like the co-working space, people from church, and then just people in general. I think just out and about, meeting them and connecting to them, Facebook and stuff. So I think for me, it's like, I feel like I always tell my wife, I'm like, if you just left me and you could pick a random place on the map, and then if you came back in like 2 weeks, I'd probably know like a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I just like,
sure, yeah. As I know you, definitely, that's 100% true. That's actually how we met. We met in this co-working space called Coptad, which is the best co-working space in the world for me. I love that. And that's where we met. And then he was just somebody who's just like, oh, as you can imagine, dear listener, he was like Coptad famous in like a second. Like everybody knew who he is. He was friends with everybody. So yeah, for you, socializing is super easy, right? So that's something that works. And then how does it go for your wife? So she's homeschooling your daughter and helping you out. What else is she doing? Like, how is she doing this part of her life?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that she hates it, but she's always like, it's difficult for me to like connect with other people, like, and to find like genuine relationships. I think for me, sometimes it can be like, because I'm going to like co-working spaces or places for like business, like it's easier to like meet people. But if I'm speaking honestly, and even if she was here, I think for most people, I say that's a lot. That's like usually I think is like excuses, right? I think if you want to connect with people, you can't wait. And I was telling like you can't wait for them to reach out. Like you can't be like, oh well, Juji didn't text me first, so like, well, obviously she doesn't want to hang out. I'm like, if you want to hang out, like you gotta ask people. And if those people don't want to hang out, then you got to go to other groups. Like you got to go to salsa, or you got to go to whatever. And then also she's used to being more in like the Hispanic community, where like that's not really like as much of a thing here. Whereas like for me, I've lived in so many different places where I really don't care. I'm like, we in Hungary, we in Mexico, I'm doing whatever y'all doing. We in India, I guess we sitting on the ground eating roti. Like it is what it is. Like to me. So I know like for her it's not as easy. So a lot of the like friends that like we have a lot of mutual friends. But I have been noticing now, I think she's going more in like these Facebook groups that have moms or other travelers. And I think they even have like some Hispanic speaking groups or Spanish speaking groups that for digital nomads. So she's starting to do that more, but I think it's just different personality groups. Like she's not as like outgoing and wanting to connect with people as I am.
So why do you think that there's not that many traveling or nomad families? So what do you think is the reason for families not going remote?
Excuses. Like it's always funny when people meet me like and they don't know who I am, and they're like for example, when I was in the States, and they're like, oh, like where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm from Indiana, but I live in Hungary. And like, oh man, I really want to do that. That's cool that you're getting to do that while you're young, because when you get like married and you have like kids like that, it would be like too hard to do. I'm like, oh, I am married. Like, yeah, but I mean like when you have kids, I'm like, yeah, we have kids. They're like, oh. I'm like, yeah, you can do it if you really want to do it. Like, I think especially for people in the States, I'm like, how do you do what you're doing? I'm like, you realize like the life I'm living is like a third cheaper than like the life that you live, right? Yeah. I'm like, you're paying like $2,000 per month on rent and like $1,000 for your car and gas and like all this other stuff. So I think people don't know the opportunities that are out there. And because they feel like it's too hard, they don't do the research. Like for some reason, like they feel like, I don't know. I feel like people feel like just by researching, they're committing, and the thought of committing like scares them. It's like, they don't even want to go into Google and be like, how much would it cost to live in Hungary? Or like, how much is a flight? Like, I'm like, yo, just look on your phone and, oh yeah, I'll do that later. I'm like, why do it later? Like, just look. So I think it just like overwhelms them. But in reality, I think now doing it with multiple kids, maybe that's a limited belief for me, but I feel like it would be a lot more difficult. If you're having to buy a whole bunch of plane tickets every single time, you're having to take like 5 people out to dinner every single time. If you have like 1 or 2, and especially if they're not like a baby, I feel like it's very possible to do.
Okay, cool. I love that you actually chose Hungary, and then you're like such an advocate for Hungary. You mentioned that before you arrived here, I'm in Lisbon, by the way, right now. So before you arrived to Budapest, I think we had a little bit more digital nomads than we have right now. And I asked around my nomad friends, why do they think that happens? I think there's like way less people than it was like a few years ago. And then their answer was that they think it's because they don't want to go to a racist place. That's what they told me. So I just really want to ask your take on this one. How do you feel the locals are? Because that's that general view right now that I get back, and I'm just like super curious. Of course, yeah, I have my own take on that one too.
I think it's funny. It's interesting. Like, I don't know if you or the people that are listening know this guy. His name is Eric Thomas. He goes by ET, the hip hop preacher. But he's like a really big social media influencer. So when I was at one of his recent speeches, he was like, "Man, I just got back from Italy, and my kids were in like some high end fashion show." He's like, "We got first class seats, like all of us stay at the best hotels. Like I got paid like $200,000 or $300,000, like speak over like all these types of things." He's like, and then I'll come back home and people are like, "That's irresponsible. Like, why do you pay so much like to do this and blah blah?" He's like, "Why are you worried about like what I'm doing for my kids? Like, you need to go out there and provide for your kids." And he's like, and then people are like, "You're gonna act like racism doesn't exist? Like, it's hard. Not everyone can do that." And he's like, "I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. I'm just saying it's not going to stop me from doing what I need to do." And so he's like, "I just don't pay attention to it." I think it's the same like for me in Hungary. Like, I think people get too worked up over like you go to a cafe and someone doesn't serve you fast enough or they look at you wrong and people are like, "That person's racist." I'm like, how do you know? How do you know? Like, you're literally making that up. Did they tell you they don't like you because you're black? Or are you assuming that? Like, how do you, like, you literally don't know like why they're looking at you this way or why they did that. And I think a lot of people also, when they go to these other countries, they're expecting them to give the good energy. And if that person gives good energy, they give it back. Whereas I don't do that. I'm like, I'm going to give you happy vibes. You can give it back to me. And if not, then I'm just going to go to the next person. I just don't understand the point of being overwhelmed with that. Now, there are places where I feel like they're so racist to where it's like they're going to point at you or they're going to make it hard on you or they might be violent against you. I can't really speak on Hungary as a whole because I haven't been to a lot of cities. But if I talk to like Budapest, I feel like that's not the vibe. I feel like that's not the energy. And I feel like most of the people that I talk to are super friendly. They're always like asking like, what can they do for me? Can they give me directions or cook for me or whatever it is? So I don't know. I just feel like for me, it's like if you give people positive energy, like everybody here has been super cool. Most people I feel like are pretty honest. So they don't do this American thing where it's like, "Oh, hey, how are you? Like we should hang." It's just like, they don't want to hang out with you. They're not going to ask you. You know what I mean? And if they do want
definitely.
they're going to ask you. So I don't know. Like I've had other people like that are like, "Oh, there's not black people in Hungary. I wouldn't go." And I'm like, I never felt like I need to have people that have the same skin color as me to be comfortable. Cause I'm like, just because you're black don't mean that we're the same. Please don't ever mistake that. Like just cause we were born and we didn't even make a decision to be born in this color does not mean we're the same. Like our mind and our actions make us the same. So I'm like, I only look for people that are like-minded and have like that positive energy. So I can understand if you want different cultural things, but I have never felt like, man, this is like such a racist place and it's so negative. I haven't personally experienced that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, D, you're definitely someone to look up to. I would say that your mindset and then how you see the world and the amount of work that you put into searching something different and finding something different and showing other people how they can do it, I think that's admirable. And I just wanted to thank you. Not only this interview, because we are getting at the end of this interview, but also the amount of wisdom that you shared in this particular episode, and then for the rest of the internet that you're doing. I think, yeah, I highly encourage everybody to look him up. We're going to put everything in the show notes. Is there anything that you're doing right now that you want to attract the attention on that might be useful for the people who are listening to this?
Yes, whenever I run for prime minister in Hungary, just vote for me, everybody, please. Not.
Yes, I'm down right now. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Please run for president. I can translate for you.
Man, that would be so funny. They're like, "What? You're the prime minister in Hungary?" No, I mean, if you want to connect with me, Instagram is like the best way because you can send like messages there. It's just Greene, D with two E's, Greene with the E at the end. So Greene, I guess technically. YouTube is like where I post like a lot of my content. So I would say those are like the best two ways. I guess plug if like anybody is looking to work with us. We actually just launched something this week, which I'm really excited about. So I know like a lot of people, their issue is like just getting started. So we have these like high-end programs I talked about. They're like $3,000, $10,000, $25,000 for people to join. But for people that are just looking to get started and really want to make an impact, what I wanted to help them do is like launch their channel, get to their first 100 to 1,000 subscribers. And if they have a business, make at least $1,000 to $3,000 per month in their business. And so we just launched a new offer where we're doing that. You can literally get help free for 14 days. And then after that, it's only $97 a month. And there's like a course, there's a community. And I also do like live calls with people. So if anybody's interested in that, just shoot me a message on Instagram or wherever and I can get you in and check that out.
That sounds super fun. All right. Dee, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you somewhere in the world.
So let's do it. I'll be out there soon.
All right, cool. See you soon then.
You are listening to the In Search of Something Different podcast, where we talk about new ways and ideas on how we live, work, and connect. If you like this episode, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating, as it helps in this world. And also, you can say hi on Instagram. You can find the show under In Search of Something -different. I'll come back to you soon with the next episode, but until that, don't forget to stay curious.